Hey YouTube, it's your girl Dr. J, and I am here with a video on balancing your schedule between working from home full time and quarantine schooling or traditional homeschooling full time. And this video is going to be answering some of the questions that I got from the last video on what's our routine looks like. How do we do this? And so I'm going to give you, I think, some tips that will help you whether you're quarantine schooling and then you plan to go back into the traditional environment, or if you are quarantine schooling right now, but you plan on continuing to homeschool even after this. So I want to preface this by saying that I understand that my work from home situation is a little bit different than the situation that a lot of people find themselves in that my schedule is pretty flexible. So for me, there's only about 5 to 6 hours out of my 40-hour work week where I have to be in a meeting at a particular time. Other than that, the rest of my hours, I can be flexible in how I do them. And I also have the ability to spread my hours over 7 days a week rather than just 5. So I understand that not everybody has this level of flexibility, but I still think a lot of these tips will work well for you. And also, I'm going to talk about what we're doing now, but I'll also preface like what we were doing when my kids were younger, because remember, we've been at this for 9 years. We're going to be going into year number 10. And so we did things a certain way when my kids were much younger, but now that they're older, they do things much more independently. And I'll talk about how we were able to build to that level of independence. So my biggest tip for anyone who is quarantine schooling or and working from home full time, and that is the importance of having a routine. Now, I didn't say schedule, I said routine. And I want to make that difference on purpose because I think one thing that leads to a lot of frustration is when people have a schedule, because so many different things can happen, particularly with that morning schedule. And especially if you started to put things on there, okay, we're going to brush teeth from 7:10 to 7:15, and then we're going to eat breakfast from 7:16 to 7:30. If you have that level of scheduling, if anything happens and you're off, you're going to start feeling rushed, you're going to start feeling frustrated, and you'll be throwing in the towel by noon because you see you're so off schedule. Whereas if you have a routine, it doesn't matter if a child woke up very early or if a child slept a little bit later or if one person wasn't feeling good, or if a dish broke and you have to clean that up. Like, it doesn't matter what little things are happening through the day, you are still getting everything accomplished that you set out to accomplish. And so go for a routine as opposed to a schedule. This is going to be particularly important if you are a traditional homeschooler and you're going back to traditional homeschooling after our quarantine schooling is over, because most homeschoolers are out of the house a lot and your day changes from one day to the next. One day you're at the park, one day you have a class, that you're going to, another day you have a field trip, and that only happens, once every 2 weeks or so. And so a routine means that all of the things that we do each day, these regular things, they're the same, even if they're not always at the same particular time. And I would say you want to make sure you have a morning routine, you want to make sure you have an afternoon routine, and you want to make sure you have an evening routine. So the morning routine is, what do we do when we wake up? What do I do? Every single child, no matter their age, I don't care if they're 3 years old or if they're 13 years old, they should know what happens after they wake up in the morning. It should never be, okay, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And the more you can get them into a routine, the more of what they're going to be doing are the things that you would like for them to be doing. If kids are younger, when they wake up, you want to make sure that they're doing things that they can accomplish, and they're doing things that make sense for them. What I mean by that is, when you're putting that routine together, make them a schedule that they can follow. And so I would go with pictures instead of words. So you give them a sheet of paper, and if you want them to, hey, wake up, make your bed, and then go brush your teeth, and then get dressed, okay, make sure that they have pictures for that. The other thing is that you want to make sure you put all the steps that they need to do in there if they're younger, because that's how you make sure they do it completely, and you're teaching them how to do it successfully so that it becomes second nature for them later. For instance, if you tell them to get dressed in the morning, and so you have a picture of them getting dressed, or a kid getting dressed, little clip art, whatever, you also want to have a picture of them in there where it shows them putting their night clothes into the laundry basket or directly into the washing machine, if that is your routine. Because if that step's not in there, they might not do that. They might just leave their night clothes on the floor or leave their night clothes in the bathroom. So if you're doing a picture of them brushing their teeth in the morning, also do a picture of them wiping out the sink after they finish brushing their teeth. Because if not, that step will be skipped. And a lot of people say, well, practice makes perfect. No. Perfect practice makes perfect. However you practice it, that's what you're going to do. So practice doesn't make perfect, it makes permanent. So how you practice it is how you will do it. And so you want them to practice it in the right way, because that's how it's going to build permanence. And if the permanence is spitting in the sink and leaving the toothpaste in the sink and the spit in the sink and all that kind of stuff, then that's what's going to become permanent. So you want to show every step, and you want to start it with pictures. And then I also encourage you to provide them as much independence as possible. For instance, my kids, my twins are younger than the high school, so my middle schoolers, they have been getting their own breakfast and lunch since I would say they were probably in the second grade. So maybe about 7, 8 years old, fixing their own breakfast and lunch. And it's just making sure that they understand what things, like what are our breakfast foods, and what is acceptable for me to have for breakfast, what is something that is acceptable for me to have for lunch, and then having those things available to them, even if you have to like portion it out or prep it, and they're just pulling out that prep thing. Sometimes when they were first starting to cook, when they were little, I would make sure that I stood there and watched them, but you still want to allow them to have as much success as possible on their own, and then continue to build in that independence as they get older. And for older kids, make sure you are changing their routine to fit their needs. So for instance, my oldest, I don't have to tell him about brushing his teeth, right? I don't have to tell him about, getting dressed in the morning. But one of the things that I had to add to his morning routine was for him to remember to check all of his emails. So not only does he have his kind of like regular email, but he's a dual enrolled student. He's an early college student. So he has to check his college email addresses as well as his regular email address. And then he has some email addresses for some organizations that he's in. So when he sits down, he's not just checking one email. He has to check, 3 or 4, sometimes 5 different emails. And so just getting him used to that part of his day, because if he doesn't, he may miss an email from his college. And the college doesn't send me emails. They only send the emails directly to him. And so he has to have that responsibility of making sure that he's up to speed with what's happening in this university, because I'm not in the know on that. And so when you have these routines that are in place, it doesn't matter if the day started at 6:30, it doesn't matter if the day started at 7:30. If somebody wakes up a little bit earlier, they can just go ahead and get started in their routine. If they wake up a little bit later, they know how to catch up. The other thing you want to do is to make sure that you have some other activities that are in there that are sometimes activities. So if you run out of other things to do, here's something that you can do to occupy your time. So if they're younger, that's when you want to have like little kit boxes available and different things like that. And if they're older, that they have some long-term projects that they're working on that they can always just kind of grab it and go. So here's where you want to really focus on your kids' passions. So if you have a kid that is a gamer, but you don't want them to do gaming stuff during the day, well, they can be working on, programming skills, or putting up video, making videos or something like that that's kind of associated with gaming, but it's more on the educational side. So they know if I wake up a half an hour early and I get everything that I have for my morning routine done, and or I finish with my schoolwork early, this is what I can do. And so then they automatically know this is exactly, this is the time where I can be working on some coding skills or some programming skills or developing my own game or doing some storyboarding or something like that. So that's going to be really helpful. Then I talked about an afternoon routine. Afternoon routines are important because that's generally where you're going to bring everybody back together, and you're going to be able to kind of restart if something was off to not a great start, or it's just something that really is going to allow everybody to kind of check and make sure they are where they're supposed to be. That afternoon routine for us, my kids they eat lunch and then they take a break. Whenever the weather is nice, particularly for quarantine schooling, whenever the weather is nice, that means going outside, kind of stretching your legs, making sure you're getting some vitamin D therapy, making sure you're just kind of getting away from the screens and doing something a little bit different, spending some time with nature. And it also, that's generally when I'm finishing up my work day, and everything is kind of coming off of my plate for the most part. And so that afternoon routine is where you're kind of refocusing, resetting, seeing how your day is going, and seeing if you need to ramp anything up, if anything hasn't been done, or if you can kind of like relax a little bit. And then that evening routine, that's when you're making sure everything that you needed to get accomplished that day has been done. Everything the kids needed to get accomplished that day is done. And everybody knows it's kind of like checking the last of that schedule. Somebody asked me how I do scheduling with my kids, and we use a version of what they call a Kanban board. A Kanban board is where you have all of your activities that you need to do, and the board has 3 sections. It's to do, in process, or done. With my kids, we don't do that middle portion. We don't do the in process. So what happens is we use a magnetic board, and I didn't grab the little magnet off, I'm sorry, but I have little magnets, and on each magnet it is one of their school activities. So for my twins, they are in Algebra 1, so one magnet is for algebra class, another magnet is for their English language arts work, another magnet is for their science that they're working on. So every morning before they get up, I set their board. So the magnets that are on their to-do side, they know these are the things that I need to do today. And then as they accomplish each task, they move that magnet to done. That means whenever I'm walking through their schoolroom, or I can see their schoolroom from my office where I work, so I can look back and I can immediately see who hasn't moved any magnets, or what sort of things they still have to do, and then they can see what they still have to do. So they don't have to come and ask me what's next. They already know what to do. Of course, when they were younger, more of it was things that I was sitting down with them and doing. But still, having that magnetic board really works, where you set it in the morning, because that's your check. A lot of times when your kids are preschool, early elementary school, that board is what you have to do, because you're doing their math with them, you're doing their reading with them, you're doing all 3 of my kids are dyslexic, so we had some therapies that we were doing each day. And so that board kept me in check, where I knew, okay, sometime today I need to do some auditory processing training. Sometime today I need to do some sensory processing training with them. Sometime today we need to make sure that we get this math done. We get a little bit of cursor practice done. And you don't want to overschedule. You want, especially when they're young, there is no subject before the age of, I would say before grade 4, there's no subject, no single subject that should take you more than about 30 minutes in a day. Now, if you are quarantine schooling and you're getting work from your child's teacher, they may have different stretches of time. You can see if you can break that up, if it's okay to break that up. But if any one activity is taking more than about 30 minutes with a child who is early elementary, that's going to be a little bit hard, especially when they're in quarantine schooling. And for traditional homeschoolers, y'all already know this. We don't need to be sitting down in one spot for 4 hours doing one thing until they get older and they're doing it by choice. But as your kids get older, they'll become more independent. So if you have a middle schooler or a high schooler, you shouldn't be sitting next to them while they're schooling. Whether they're quarantine schooling or traditional homeschooling, they should be able to do some things independently, and you're becoming more of that advisor, the academic coach, helping them find the answers, sitting down and explaining things that they might be having trouble with, but you're not doing that all day, every day. They should be gaining some independence. And so you can be going in and checking grades and making sure they're, getting things accomplished. Now, before my kids started moving their magnets from to do to done, when we first incorporated that, no one could move their magnet to done until I had checked their work. And so it's not done till it's done to mama standards, right? And a lot of times mama standards was, okay, your professor said do it like this, so you have to do it like that. That's mama standards. And for you, if you're quarantine schooling your public school child, mama standards, daddy standards, grandma standards, auntie standards, whoever's doing the quarantine schooling, your standards are consistent with what the teacher has asked you to do. But still, so when they know that you're going to check their work, then they know don't move that magnet until it's done. Kind of like their phones, right? Like they know that their phones get checked, so it's like it might be random, you don't know, but it better not be nothing on that phone and not supposed to be there. Same thing for their schoolwork. Once they get into the routine of knowing that you will check and you will check them if when you check the work is not the way it's supposed to be. So you want to make sure, get that routine, and then it's just teaching them what they need to do. When you have your middle schoolers and your high schoolers, especially when they're doing high school level and college level work, remember that you have to build into every day things like studying for a test, things like prepping for a paper, prepping for the different things, prepping for lectures, doing some pre-lecture work. So all those sort of things. We even use the board. I know my oldest, he's doing a internship with a tech company. And so he has even started to do that. Okay. He does artificial intelligence work. And so he knows, okay, I have this project that I'm going to be reporting out on this day. So I have to have all these things done ahead of time. He's so used to working on a schedule, not a schedule, a routine, not a schedule. He's so used to working on a routine. Well, sometimes if it has a deadline, it has a schedule. So he's so used to working like that, knowing that, okay, I can't start it the day that it's due. I need to be starting it ahead of time because the day that it's due, it needs to be done. And that includes it's already been reviewed and everything else. So because we've been working like this for so long, when he started to get more higher level stuff, now with doing, professional projects for professional organizations where mom and daddy don't have anything to do with that, and now you are being looked at as a professional colleague, for organizations, then it was just natural because that's how we had always been doing it. And so, if you guys, this video is long, y'all know all my videos are long, I'm sorry. But if you want me to talk more about getting that transition from elementary into more independence of middle schoolers and high schoolers and prepping for college and that sort of stuff, let me know. But really, that's what it's about. Routine over schedule, unless something has a definite deadline. For younger kids, pictures and visuals instead of words, and having that routine in a way where it becomes second nature for everybody. So I hope this helps. This is Dr. J, and I'm out. Bye bye.